What's up, everyone? My name is Grant Findlay-Shirras, and welcome to another episode of Real Estate Moguls. And on today's show, we got the co-founder and CEO of First.io, Mike Schneider. How you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Just a quick insight before we hear his story. First.io is a real estate technology that uses AI and machine learning, right? To help agents be smarter with their follow-up, right? We all know the fortunes in the follow-up, and these guys will help you with that so that you can have more conversations. So it's not about technology to help you just buy leads and not talk to people. It's all about using technology to be more human, and I really love that. So let's start with, why you started First.io.
Sure. So I actually came from the venture capital world and was investing in companies that had a strong data focus and were focused on particular verticals, really. And I was fascinated. I was fascinated by the fact that when you start with a lot of the data to solve problems, now we have all kinds of new machine learning technology where you can build products that were previously unimaginable. So I've always had a passion for real estate and had a lot of realtor friends. So as I was looking at the next company I wanted to start, I actually sat down with 100 real estate agents and I asked all of them, what's hard about your business? What's frustrating? Where does your business come from? And it was astounding, two things I learned. One, the vast majority of their business was coming from their existing relationships. Even people that were spending $10,000 a month on leads, that was still less than a third of their business. And the second thing is I asked the following question. Well, how do you generate that business from your network? Almost unanimously, it was more than 70% of the time, the first words out of their mouth were, well, I should. I should. They always had this impending guilt that there was so much more they could be doing because they knew there was so much more opportunity out there in their network and they didn't know how to solve it. So we built a little prototype with a friend of mine who was a data engineer at Netflix and built out a lot of data science and other companies, and we found that we actually had something that really worked, and so I left the venture fund to start First.
Very cool. So talk to us about how the technology works.
So it's actually remarkably complex on the back end and very, very simple in its product form. So on the back end, we have been tracking 214 million people across the country for 3.5 years across hundreds of factors, and it's everything from demographic information and life events and property information to identify who's actually going to be in market to sell 6 to 12 months from now. So the whole goal is to get you there first, right? To help you have the conversation first. But really, the easiest way to think about that, because there's some cool new machine learning that can power that question better than you could have 10 years ago. But the simple way to think about it is that it's doing what you and I would do intuitively at scale. So I'll give you an example. You know that if my wife and I are having our third kid, that we're more likely than average to sell, just on that one factor, right? That would be considered a deterministic model. They're having their third kid, they're more likely to sell. If you then also knew that we lived in a 2-bedroom townhouse, we made a couple $100,000, you might realize that we're more likely to sell. And models, these machine learning models now are able to look at all of those factors across 214 million people all of the time when you don't necessarily know all the things that are going on. We know when people's incomes go up or they have job changes, and all these things are factoring into that. And so to be able to track that across the entire US and then make that available to our agents, that's kind of what's happening on the back end. But on the front end, and what really matters is how good is that. On the front end, what we found is, how could you use that? We thought about leveraging that for marketing for agents. But back to that first question of where agents' business is coming from, what we found is it's the last wave of technology, which was largely around helping agents with their marketing, which is important, but it's largely been solved. Right? A lot of those deals are happening now that we've worked with agents all across the country and all different kind of spectrums of agent and different brokerages. We found that agents are missing over 60% of the deals from their existing network. And it's not, to your point of fortune being in the follow-up, it's not for lack of marketing or drip campaigns, right? It's just that you don't have enough time to actually have conversations with everyone. And so one of the things that has become a mantra for us is that conversations win clients, not campaigns. Campaigns are to get you to a conversation, but the real limiter on an agent's production is how many conversations they can have. And so we're trying to make each one of those as productive as possible. So when you say how does it work, the simplest way to explain the experience for a user is that in 5 minutes, and we've had agents doing this here at Inman Connect, doing it right on the spot, in 5 minutes they can sync their email and their phone contacts. We then go and take those, we match them to the property that they own, and then we're able to pull in and serve up to you from the 4,000 people you have in your Gmail and your phone, the 20 people you need to have a conversation with this month, where every 4th or 5th one of them will sell in the next 6 months.
Very cool.
So instead of 1 in 20, 1 in 30, it's every fourth or fifth one of them is going to sell.
So many directions I want to go with this. So first, the data side.
Sure.
What data are you looking at? How are you getting that data? Because that usually is a problem for data-centric companies. So it's gotten easier over the years, and maybe now it's the right time for these kinds of things to be coming out. So talk to us about the data. What's the data? Where are you getting it from?
Yeah. I think you're going to be hearing a lot more about data because people realize that it's a necessity, right, if you're going to actually build some of these things. I can't tell you exact sources and where it's coming from, but I will tell you that we are incredibly focused on security, and we have bank-level security, and we're very conscientious of how we use that. So a lot of agents will say, hey, can you show me why this person's likely to move? I say, no, I can't tell you that their income just went up $40,000, right? There's a lot of privacy around that. But we've partnered with, I think it's not so much a problem as it is very expensive. So to get this level of data across 214 million people is millions of dollars worth of data spend, and then you have to build the models on top of it and train it for years before you get to this level of performance where we can hand you a list where every third or fourth person's going to sell.
And that's how you guys probably raise money?
We're venture backed, and so we've raised $8.5 million to date, and we're growing pretty quick.
So let's go that direction for a second now, because there's a lot of, again, startups, and you have a really great unique perspective because you used to be in the venture world. So what was the story that you pitched to venture that made them go, I want to invest in you? As an example to also then pull out, if you are trying to raise money as a startup, here are the things to be thinking about to help you do that.
Sure. Well, there's two sides to that. One is you've seen a lot of money pouring into the industry. I'll tell you and this is maybe an interesting stat since most people haven't been talking to as many VCs, over 2/3 of the venture capitalists I talk to were definitely intrigued in the business model and the metrics we had and how the team we had built. We've hired some incredible talent that have scaled companies before and gone public and all that. But 2/3 of them said, this is a really exciting business, but our thesis is that the realtor's going away. And that's where you're seeing a lot of the venture money pouring into the space. And I think that the other third was really intrigued by the fact that we had kind of a counterpoint. That if you look at how many homes were sold with a real estate agent in 2001, and if you and I were betting on whether that, I think it was about 79% of homes, whether that number was going to go up or down as Zillow's coming online and Redfin's coming online in 2001, all those, we probably would have all bet that there would be fewer transactions done with real estate agents. But since then, over the last 17 years, in 2018, it actually went up. It was over 80%. And so I think that it was a very interesting fundraise because the third that got it, that realized that we are dealing with the highest pressure transaction in our lives, and it's a messy transaction, and you're not going to cut out the real estate agent. They were intrigued by the fact that realtors are spending all this money on lead gen, and there really aren't technology companies focused on understanding not just when people are going to sell, but how do relationships play into that. So our other machine learning model is focusing on what does our relationship look like. So if I know that 2 people in your database are 4 times likely to sell, but you've known one of them for 5 years and we just met, right? That person is potentially 12 times more important for you to follow up with than a random lead. But they're certainly 3 times more important to follow up with than me. Does that make sense? Yeah. So being able to take great data and machine learning and apply it to these specific problems, I think that's what we ended up with a couple different term sheets from different funds. And that's what they were excited to back, was a way to come in and help realtors be more productive and get to scale, not just on the lead side as Zillow and Realtor and others have, but on the network side, which there's a lot of smaller marketing CRM type tools.
What are the challenges, when you guys think about the future of your company?
Yep.
So you just talked a little bit about that with you're looking at new machine learning and new ways to help you, again, be smarter with your prospecting, relationship building, following up. What else do you think about the future for First.io, and what are some of the challenges that, again, if people are listening, because we've got agents, teams, brokers, investors who watch this, what are the challenges that you guys face that maybe some people can help you with?
Sure. So I think that some of the exciting things that are up next, as we've moved from just working with top agents and teams to now rolling out with larger brokerages, is that we're able to help you map the biggest asset that an agent has. So if I'm an agent here in New York and I move to San Francisco, I have to start almost all over. right? I have to start from ground zero because I have no network, and that's what's going to generate my business. But at the same time, most agents and certainly brokerages have never actually mapped that. So the fact that we can take your email and your phone and match those people to property and for the first time ever show you that you missed 76 listings last year, I think that's really compelling. I think that's going to help agents really focus in on why did I miss those and how could I have gotten ahead of that? How could I spend my time or my marketing or my team's time better on that because I have this asset. And every hour that I invest into those conversations is reinforcing this incredible asset that I have built, this network. And I think that's the biggest, not only competitive advantage, but it's the long-term differentiator for realtors when it comes to Opendoor and others. If you get to have the conversation first, which is why we're called First, as they're just thinking about whether or not they should sell, you can help them process, should they sell with Opendoor? Should they use Ribbon? Should they, think about, how should they think about your service differently, right? You're not going to outmarket Redfin and some of these others. You got to have local expertise, right? You got to bring, park bench style in conversation. And I think that's what I think as we start to map it and show agents not only what they lost, but how we can help them win, how we can get them into that conversation earlier, and build them up as a trusted advisor. I think that there's a really unique opportunity. And it's not a one-to-one analogy, but Zillow came out with some new data, which was for the first time I could see the value of any house. And it wasn't very accurate, but it was intriguing. Yeah. And I think we have this opportunity over here where realtors know that 70-80% of their business is going to come from their network, but they don't know if they're capturing 70-80% of the business in their network, right? It's this big amorphous group, and so we're shining a light on that. We're saying, here is the missed opportunity. Let's help you win more of that this year. So we're really excited about that. We're excited to help brokers think about that as well, and also I think one of the challenges for brokers and agents has always been, for the agent, I don't know if I want to entrust my closest network, which is my asset, to the broker. What if I leave, right? And so the fact that we can be an intermediary layer where we can help agents with their network, we can give some insight into performance to the broker without handing over the contacts. I think that's going to be an interesting opportunity this year for agents and brokers.
Talk to us about your sales and marketing methods. Do you sell directly to the agent? Do you sell to teams, to brokerages, and how do you do it?
Yeah, good question. And I skipped over one of the other questions, which was challenges.
Challenges that you face in the company.
The biggest challenge is getting MLS data. It's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly cumbersome to spin up a whole team and go do all the integrations and sign all the agreements. And I think that's one of the things that's going to and needs to change. In terms of other technology companies being able to service agents better. And so that's a big challenge. In terms of go-to-market and how we sell, we did start early on. We wanted to get a broad spectrum of agents all across the country to kind of understand how it would work for different agents in different areas. And so we were going and bringing on individuals and teams all across the country. And we've learned a lot. We built that. We did 6 or 7 pilots with brokerages over the last 6 months, which have gone very well. And so now our primary go-to-market is selling into the brokerage and opening this up for their agents. But agents can obviously go to our website and sign up individually and leverage this for their network as well.
Very cool. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about there's the future where the agent is eliminated, the agent is still there just as like they are, or maybe they're just serving a different kind of market. Same thing with brokerages.
Yep.
Are brokerages going to go away, or still be the same, or change? You've been in the industry for a while. Yep. You've been the venture side. What are your thoughts on what is really going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think 3 to 5 years is a lot easier question. I think 10 to 20, there's some potential tectonic shifts that could happen, but I think in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think, certainly agents aren't going anywhere. There's going to be layers that Opendoor and others are taking out of the market just because they can do it in a very repeatable fashion. They're going to be able to market to that segment very well and very profitably. And so you're going to see Opendoor take 5 to 10% in certain markets, right? But I think that for agents, those that are going to be competitive are going to need to really double down on their network and their relationships and be the local advisor, not just on this house, but also on the financing side. And I think the fact that there are all these new business models coming in is a great opportunity for agents to be the one, because candidly, and I actually just bought a house with Ribbon, which many people probably haven't heard of. And if you're a realtor listening to this and you haven't heard of Ribbon, you're making the point for me on getting educated. Now, they're not in all of your markets, so you don't have to know about them right now. But I think there's an incredible opportunity to be able to research what are all the new financing options, Home Tap and Point and Ribbon, and Knock and Open Door and others that might be a competitive to your service, but being able to intelligently sit down with a potential seller and walk them through all those options because they've received the marketing already, right, from Open Door. And so in markets where they are, I think that's going to become a competitive advantage for an agent where the consumer is going to be confused. And they're not sure how or what's the best use and what's the best way to finance this home, and should I do a traditional loan, should I sell part of the equity? So I don't think in the next 3 to 5 years realtors are going anywhere. I think if there's a market correction, I think as always, some of the part-time agents are going to go away, but those that have built a successful relational base, even in the peak of the downturn, we went from 5.5 million transactions to like 4.5. So lots of transactions still happening. Great agents that are not lead dependent have always survived.
So let's maybe briefly, talk about that 10, 20-year vision. What are your just general thoughts? Like, what do you think is going to be a tectonic shift in this space?
Oh, it's really hard to call tectonic shifts, and those who do really make a lot of money usually. I think that here at Inman, a lot of the conversation was about making the transaction more seamless. And I think that that's definitely going to happen as you get more of these financing pieces figured out and more of the back end solved. So I think it's just going to be a lot faster, which will mean there will be so many more consumer options. And I think that commissions, and that I might get lynched for this, but I think that commissions over time probably will come down a bit, just because there's going to be so many different offers to sell that you're often going to have to match, even if you're going to win that customer. So I don't think we're going to go down from 6% down to 2%, but I think that you're going to see a lot of the same players, even in 10 to 20 years. You're going to have agents really owning a hyper-local area where they have unique expertise and relationships and can provide tremendous value that you're just never going to build. We've built enough machine learning models to know you're never going to get down to the place where you can talk to a customer through a robot, right? Is about the new shops that are opening up and the parks and the dynamics and what all is happening in an area. So I don't think that's going to happen. I do think there's an opportunity and you're seeing a lot of this consolidation around other brands. So the Compasses, or Realogy 2.0, you might call it. So I think you might find more people consolidating into brands as opposed to fracturing into smaller indies. But I think that's still to be determined.
Now, coming from the investor side, if you have advice for investors of here are some winning technologies and companies that I think you should be taking a look at, and I've seen people interested in maybe these companies and technologies that I do not think is where it is, what kind of advice would you have to give to investors who are getting into the space?
That's a really good question. I think it just, investors generally, and this comes from being in the VC space, they have their strategies for what they're investing in and where they want to go. I would say that one of the things, if you're kind of a later stage investor, I think there's lots of great opportunities to participate in new financing methods. I think the intersection of fintech and real estate is going to be really interesting. And so I think that's great. I think some of the SaaS businesses in this space, with the inherent dynamics of churn, even though I just said realtors aren't going away, the fact that 70% of realtors don't make it past their second year and there's just kind of this constant churn through the space makes the kind of software side of it, it has some unique dynamics, and I think getting to scale is going to be is the interesting question. It's interesting to look at which companies have done that. And we just heard Chris Goff, one of the big M&A guys, talking about how healthy the exits are in this space, right? And 9-figure exits on a regular basis to these large strategics. But I do think that if you're talking about the software, there aren't very many of them that have gotten to the $1 billion mark. But there's healthy $250 to $1 billion exits in that space. So it just kind of depends on what their strategies are.
And for all the startups out there, from the lessons that you've learned, any advice you have for companies getting into the space and things that will help them get more success faster?
I think it's the same I'd give every startup. I think it's focus on your product and getting to what we would call product market fit, where your customers are loving it and referring it to others. I think that's the most important thing. And from there, then in this space, you really do have to have a path to scale. I think that's going to be the real question, because I think investors that have been watching this space for a long time know that there are inherent churn dynamics. You're not going to necessarily be able to sell to individual agents fast enough or cost effectively enough as they would expect from other industries. And so I think that there's got to be something unique and interesting, whether that's a network effect or some kind of growth plan you have.
So I've met a lot of different people, and you're definitely one of the more sharper owners of tech companies. So thank you so much, Mike, for being on the show. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure, I'm just Mike at first.io. Shoot me a note. Love to talk.
Well, hey, as always, if you have not subscribed to the show, do it so you can learn from more rock stars and real estate moguls like Mike.